around and say hello to you. I'm good. He's not here today. I'd like to
Certainly
call to
fitting.
order the February meeting of the zoning commission for 2022. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have seated a quorum, so we're ready to move forward. My understanding, Ty gave me a call this morning that there's kind of at the last minute, some new business that's coming before us. And it's a PDD number 1, proposed text amendment. Who would like to speak to that issue? Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, excuse me 1 minute. I do not. Everybody. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Ricky has me. I apologize. Okay.
Otherwise you'll have quorum.
Yes, sir.
Oh, thank you very much, Madam Vice Chair, members of the commission. My name is Joel Green. Would you prefer that I speak with my mask on or my mask?
Whatever you're more comfortable with.
I'm
I have
fine.
no problem. I don't know. Does anyone here have a problem if he takes it off?
I'm happy
No.
to do either. I just want you to be able to hear me.
Whatever you prefer.
Thank you very much. Once again, Joel Green. I practice law in Bridgeport with the law offices of Green and Gross. It's my pleasure to appear before you this evening on behalf of Apple Real Estate, who's the owner of the property at 425 Main Street North that you're probably familiar with. And before I go any further in following up on the Vice Chair's comments, I first and foremost really want to thank you for hearing us tonight. I want to thank Ms. Kern and Ms. Rado for your generous cooperation. This was something that I had submitted yesterday, and I will say that I'm relatively new to this application, and but what this application involves are proposed revisions to the text of PDD 1. And as you all may be familiar, the property is the 12-acre property at 425. I presume you're all familiar with the property, and it is a PDD that was established approximately 50 years ago, and it obviously, as the name suggests, it was the first planned development district, and I went through the various revisions, and as you're aware, it really began as something that was a processing and storage and sort of a depot for Baskin-Robbins. And at the time that it was formed, this commission, in forming it, recognized that it was in the R30 zone, that there had been a pre-existing manufacturing use, that potentially that non-conforming manufacturing use could be divided into more properties. It could be developed in a more intense way. And so this PDD 1 worked nicely in that it respected the sort of the, and as you're all familiar, and I will tell you this is the first time I've appeared in Southbury, so you'll pardon me, but it has apparently worked really well as sort of a manufacturing and somewhat industrial use that borders on residential properties and sort of a residential zone. But it functioned really well when it was formed, and as I understand it, it's functioned well and not created any sort of unnecessary intrusion or problems where it's located. So as you may be aware, at some point Baskin-Robbins left the property, and a new Campac acquired the property They had a similar use. It was a slightly less intense use in terms of the traffic. It was less intense in terms of drainage. And my client acquired the property last May. And for just under a year, my client has been involved in trying to lease approximately 14,800 feet of warehouse space on the property that has been vacant. And in forming the PDD, this commission recognized that you had an ice cream use and, for that sort of food manufacturing, storage, and the like on the property. Campac had a similar use, but again, slightly less intense. But the net result of the way the PDD evolved was it refers to a food use. And that sort of food manufacturing use and food processing plant is one that has proven to be a challenge because it's very restrictive in terms of the kinds of tenants that my client can attract for the space. So we come before you this evening seeking a text amendment. As my client has discussed with Ms. Kern, who's been extremely patient and extremely helpful, but as we've explained, we've looked at, my client has been approached by, for example, a moving company that wanted to use that space as storage. They've been approached by a mattress company that wanted to use it as storage for new mattresses. My client is mindful of the fact that the proposed use shouldn't intensify in any way the use of the property. Obviously, effectively, whether it's ice cream or mattresses going in and out of the site, if the volume of traffic is the same, all of the operations are inside the building. There was, I noted something in the early text that there was approximately 5% of the property could be used for outdoor storage. I don't know that that has actually ever been done, and staff can probably fill you in on that. But so what we're looking for is a change in the text that would allow my client to attract a different sort of user for a portion of the building, but once again being mindful of the sort of the concerns that this commission has in preserving sort of the character and quality of life of neighboring properties. Now, I've discussed with Ms. Kern the fact that really at some point this PDD, the overall text, and from a planning standpoint, this might benefit from being rewritten. In other words, the entire zone, and that's something that may happen because there are leases on the property that will expire in the future. So the point of doing this now in this way and seeking sort of this limited text amendment is, once again, this property has been partially vacant for over a year. It's a significant amount of space. There are potential tenants who are interested. So I think we look forward to sharing a dialogue with this commission and to probably rewriting this PDD, but immediately it's our hope to be able to fill the space with an appropriate tenant and to deal with sort of a limited text amendment at this time. I got a little bit involved with a ready, fire, and aim problem with my text amendment. I do have a slight amendment that I'd like to share with the commission as we get started on this, and I have copies where I've highlighted the change. So I've highlighted in yellow the change, and I've done this in response to the sort of the immediate contacts that we've gotten from a moving company that would use this as sort of long-term storage. It would not be an intense use. Obviously, it wouldn't involve many trucks, even on a weekly basis. So it would be long-term storage for a moving company, or storage, or for a mattress company that would be storing inventory. So these would not be traffic-intense uses, and once again, everything would be internal to the building. So that's why we are seeking this very limited text amendment. And I also want to thank Mr. Bielmeyer, has been very helpful in sort of reviewing this with me, and the economic, from an economic development standpoint, and has been very helpful to my client in trying to deal with the issue of this vacant space. I think that he has some remarks and has a presentation for the commission, and maybe, I don't know whether you have questions for me at this juncture, or whether you want to ask me questions after Mr. Bielmeyer speaks. But once again, I just wanted to do this introduction tonight, and obviously there's a process and it goes to planning, and we'll be back on it. But I don't know, as a preliminary matter, whether I can answer any questions for you at this juncture.
I don't know how the rest of the members feel. I think I might prefer to hear from Kevin Bielmeyer first to get a little bit.
Sure, of course.
his
Yeah,
thinking on it.
yeah, absolutely.
Is that
So
okay?
I'll
Everybody go with that?
sit down.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having us. So I prepared a memo. I'm just going to read it into the record, but I also gave it to you as well. Distinguished members of the Zoning Commission, Southbury's inventory of available industrial properties is few to none. We have hardly any. For more than 100 years, as Mr. Green said, 425 Main Street North has been a manufacturing site. It's our town's first PDD. The sites existed within the historic district number 1, amiably, that's a tough word to say, quietly tucked away behind the trees. Most drive by this site and they don't even actually know it's there. There's many people I've talked about this site, and they say, "Where is that?" And I'm like, you drive by it probably every day, but you don't realize it. It was an ice cream factory going back, as I said, over 100 years. Some might know it was Old 100, it was known as, and then it became Baskin-Robbins for about 3 decades. More recently, it's been owned and operated by Canpack Food Processing Company. Something to note is that Canpack is actually still there. So they sold the property to Apple Real Estate, but they have remained a tenant. They signed a lease with them. However, the 14,800 square feet of space is what is in question here. And I'm not sure if in your packet or not you have this, but if not, I'll pass it around. It gives you some pictures. No.
No?
Here, I'll just pass this around.
Thank you.
This actually shows the space, so, bless you. It's actually quite a nice space because of the size and the height. So it's over 25 feet in height, and that's a very attractive thing, particularly for storage. It's been used as storage. It still remains available. The owner, as Mr. Green said, seeks the opportunity to be able to lease it to another tenant that is not a subsidiary of the primary tenant. So that's kind of the primary decision that we're seeking today. Is this, whether it's a subsidiary use? So it has been storage. It has, we're not asking for a use that is not in compliance with what this property has been used for. It's just that to date, the whole building as a whole has been one user using it in this way, and what's being sought now is Canpack's staying on as a tenant, but rather than have this 14,800 square feet sit empty because they're not using it, can it be leased to a separate tenant? And right now, the way the language in the PDD was written, because of course they only had Baskin-Robbins in mind and Canpack in mind, was one user and any subsidiary use is subsidiary to that, a single tenant. So that's sort of the fine tuning of this that we're looking for. I do want to note that there's a real shortage of warehouse space all over the place, not just this area. And as you can imagine, with the increased online sales, the need for distribution, warehouse, and storage is in very high demand. And we can capture some of this market here in Southbury, but with this space, it's really our only opportunity in Southbury to do that, unless we build more distribution warehouse space. As mentioned, a prospective tenant is considering the space right now. A previous one actually passed on it because their needs were just too immediate. That's just kind of shows you how anxious people are to use this kind of use. So it's time sensitive from that standpoint, and I really hope we can strike while the iron's hot, so to speak. So therefore, I'd like to state my support of the proposed text amendment to PDD 1, 425 Main Street North, Southbury, Connecticut. And I did include in your packet just a little article about how in-demand warehouse space is, and this is literally yesterday, so it's hot off the press. And then I guess last, I just want to mention this as you know, is part of Historic District Number 1, so we did go before the Historic District Number 1 Commission earlier this month on the 3rd to make them aware of this, and so they, I think in your packet we've included the minutes, or it's in mine, from that meeting, and their feeling was, as long as this is not something that's increasing the impact of the site, they're predominantly concerned with just exterior. Their concerns are the exterior, not the interior, and this isn't something that really is going to affect the exterior at all. In fact, depending on the user, it's very unlikely they're even going to require a sign, because it's a storage for a company, not for people to be stopping by and buying things. So they don't need to even likely have a sign out front. So with the exception of front parking or anything that would affect the front facade or any kind of signage, they felt that it wasn't really in their purview to even have to weigh in on it. So that was their decision. So at this time, I can have Mr. Green come back up if you have any questions, or if you have any for me.
Question that comes up.
Yep.
You mentioned that it has already, in the recent time, been used for storage. Was it Canpack that was using it themselves for the storage? And was it food product kind of storage?
So what I know for certain is that this area was the cooler for Baskin-Robbins. So it was their primary storage for all their, ice cream. For that reason, it's to my understanding, it doesn't, even have heat because it was, a cold space. Okay. So it's, it was definitely for storage for them for over their 3 decades. Not 100% sure how Canpack has utilized it. If they diminished their footprint as the time went on, which eventually led to them deciding to sell the property. But the space hasn't been used as a much more than it's really been a storage space, and which is one of the reasons why I think it's so open. It's ideal for racks and other kinds of things that you need in a warehouse, which again makes it perfect for that use. But if you wanted it to be something else, you'd have to do some fit out and do a lot more to it. And this becomes a use that it's already tailor ready for, because it's a big open space.
So it's not, right now there aren't the racks and the kinds of things you see. It's just a big empty.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, let me pass this around. This is literally what it looks like. I've been inside and taken pictures of it, and that's what it looks like.
Okay. So So is it your statement that Campac was not themselves storing in it? It's been empty?
That, I don't wanna make that statement
Okay,
for
we
certain.
don't
They-
know.
Over the 2 decades they've had it,
My understanding was, and my understanding, I'm not, my understanding was that at one point Campac was using it. They did not need it as cold storage, as I understand it, because their products did not require refrigeration.
Mhm.
So I believe when the amendment came in, that was one of the factors, and they also reduced the amount of trucks coming in as well.
Anyone else on the commission have questions?
So you met with the historical district, you said. Did they provide something in writing as to their disposition?
the minutes, they provided the minutes. They said that they'd be happy to write a letter if necessary, but they put in a very detailed letter in the minutes.
Okay,
It's the last page on my,
We did not have this in advance.
okay, all right, we'll take a look at
yeah,
that.
you
Okay.
have it there in this,
Okay.
at the last page of
Oh,
the packet.
that's the one, okay.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions for either of these gentlemen? Rich?
I do also have another question. You'd mentioned there were other leases or leases expiring as well?
Yes, the seller.
property.
Actually, Campac is a tenant now.
Right,
So they are the tenant, and their lease has a limited
so it's
term.
their lease that expiring, there's no other tenant in the space at this time?
I don't believe there's any other tenants in the
Okay.
space at this time.
Okay.
And I believe their lease is up, I'm going to say in 2 years, as I understand
Yeah,
it.
my understanding is they signed a limited 2-year lease when the purchase was made.
So they're already almost 1 year into their 2-year lease, because they bought this property transferred last spring.
Correct. So I think all avenues will lead us back to the commission at some point for
Right,
a
I
larger
was gonna
rewrite.
ask you,
But
yeah.
right at the moment, once again, we're trying to have some flexibility to fill this space.
Anyone else have any?
Just one more question, sorry. And so how far are you in your negotiations with a potential lessee at this point? I mean,
As I understand it, there was some inquiry made by the moving company tenant, but I believe that is not proceeding at this point.
Kevin would know better than
Sure,
I.
so, yeah, so we had, the moving company was, they were ready to sign on the dotted line, but they needed to be in there like yesterday. They needed to be in there beginning of February. And that's when we sort of became aware that even though the broker, and I have to confess myself too, I've shown this space to many a client and just sort of made really the wrong assumption that this space was available as long as we stayed within the confines of the use of the manufacturing and or storage and warehouse, because that's what it's been used for. However, like you said, the fine language made it specified that it was usable in that regard if it was the primary tenant, in this case, Campac. So when the van lines became aware that it was gonna require, changing the text and going through this process of revision, we held on to them as long as we could, but they, continue to look, and they have, they pulled out. A previous company that was looking, a mattress company, they're still circling the wagon, kind of waiting. They don't want to put, their application in and put their chips on the table until they sort of see, if it's realistically something that they can pursue. But, I have no doubt, again, and that's kind of why I alluded to the property's suitability for this, but also the need that's out there for it, because I think that as soon as it's clear that it can be used for that, we're not, whether it's the mattress company or whether it's the one that's gonna come in right behind it, looking for space, it'll be an attractive opportunity.
I think, Ty, you have some comments you'd like to?
Yes, so this is the first time I'm seeing this version of it, and just briefly going over it really quickly. I don't see, but maybe you could identify in the text where it calls out as a multi-use facility. It doesn't appear to be clear in the text to me, and I don't know if that's an issue for you or not, but it's my manufacturing company and a storage facility both in the same building, running at the same time, so you're not listing the uses as individual possible uses, you want them to happen all at the same time.
Correct, and as I understand it, the law permits a leased property to
Split into.
have different
tenants.
uses in different portions of the property. We're not looking to subdivide the property, we're just looking to have a leased space to one tenant with a permitted use, and a lease, an existing lease to a tenant who's occupying now with a permitted use.
And the owner of the property is a separate entity. They are the
Correct.
ones bringing in the
Correct.
people to lease the
Correct,
land.
correct.
Ty, is there anything else you'd like to add at this point?
No, I mean, this is a little bit fragmented, so it's hard to tell where this fits into the
Right.
PDD, so I would have to compare it to what we have on record. So I can't really comment any further past that.
And I understand that this has all happened rather quickly, and once again, I'll apologize again, but we're doing our best to
No.
get a tenant, and,
Well, I can assure you that our commission, as well as the town of Southbury, is very eager to be open to business and to bring in business. At the same time, we have to be cognizant of the rules, regulations, and the town itself.
and potential impacts.
Sure.
Sure.
I guess my thought is that with Kevin as a really good advocate, and with Ty with excellent understanding of how the zoning regulations work, that if the three of you work together, you as the attorney, so that you understand the legal piece, and Kevin, you understanding what the economics are going to be, and Ty, you understanding better the regulations, that this can move forward in a hopefully a very positive way.
Thank you.
But it wouldn't be appropriate for us to send this to planning at this point, because you might be disappointed, because they would look and say, what the heck are they talking about? So once you get your ducks in order and come back, and I think Ty can be really helpful with that through our land use, then we'd be ready to talk about going to planning, and when appropriate, have public hearing, and to move it along. Our goal is not to drag our feet,
Okay.
but rather to be sure that it's done in a way where you will be successful, and it will set up for future use
Fair
what
enough.
you want it to be. Anyone else on the commission have some thoughts or things you'd like to add?
Yeah, concur.
So what would what would the mechanism be to get it to planning? Would we come back here first? Is that the,
I believe.
Yeah, so, I mean, you have your application in, so if you want to revise it to include, I mean, we can talk about just making it a little bit clearer as far as, the last submission, you had the entire regulation.
correct?
So that would be something that would be helpful, so it's a full
I
piece.
can
and
take care
then-
of that tomorrow.
Right, and then come back to the commission with the full presentation, and then I would imagine if you're satisfied, you could refer it to planning, and at the same time, schedule a public hearing, and
Fair enough.
it will move along from there.
And I think too, when you get the packet in, Ty has really been excellent at sending things out to the commission, so that we have time in advance to look it over, call and say, what does this mean, or whatever. Our chairman, who unfortunately wasn't available for us tonight, is very well versed in this kind of thing, and he will also be someone who will be very helpful. So that by the time we come to our meeting to discuss it, we'll all have had chances to sort of amongst ourselves, ask some questions and be sure things are tied up properly so it moves forward. And then we will go right ahead when appropriate and send it to planning.
Fair enough.
Okay?
Fair enough. Thank you for your time, and
You're welcome.
appreciate your attention.
Kevin,
Thank
that works for you?
Well, yes and no. So, I understand the process, certainly, we've been through it enough, so, the reality is, just to honestly put it on the table, is I I don't know that, you know, in a similar fashion to what happened with Joyce Van Lines, I don't know if the mattress company, let's say, will hang in there, you know, for that,
Right.
only because we're really then looking at, you know, April
Right.
at best, I think. Well, actually, with this process, I was thinking, you know, April 1 was probably the best we could hope for. That's what I had told Joyce Van Lines when they were inquiring about it. I said, well, it's got to go to this and it's got to go to that, and it's, you know, this is what it is. And so I said, you know, best case scenario, you're probably thinking about getting a key, you know, if everything goes smoothly, getting a key to open up April 1. I think if we follow the course of action you've laid out, Susan, I think it's pretty safe to say that the earliest we'd be then looking at is May 1. So,
I think that would be more realistic. We
you know.
certainly have in the past, and we could always call an extra meeting if there was something really pending and it was important.
Sure.
That's been done before. But I think it's important to have language put into this that meets today's needs for immediacy, but at the same time, sets us up so we aren't in trouble in the future.
Yes.
That's the concern that I have. And sometimes we rush into something
Sure.
with regret, you know, a little after. So getting it in order.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, we're talking about all of you as very talented people who ought to be able to figure out how to do this. I am not in that pile, by the way. Don't call me on that one.
I also think the risk is, you know, especially based on your presentation, that the space like this is so much in demand. I don't think you risk losing a potential tenant forever if they're really lining up, as you're saying, that
Right.
you will have people looking for the space, even if you don't have that particular tenant. I don't think the intent is to create an unnecessary burden for you, but to be
Sure.
prudent about.
Yeah, and of course, you know, I part of me feels for the owner, because I know he's had it for a while, and you know, and I said something to him of the fact that, you know, once this thing is available to be occupied, I have no doubt we'll find somebody to go in there. And he's like, I hope you feel that way. He goes, because, you know, I've been holding on to it for, you know, however long he's had it now, and
Right.
you know, obviously is anxious. So, you know, I think there is a lot of potential here for something good, and but I understand, you know, we obviously want to.
Out of curiosity, do you know why he delayed the coming before the committee he's had it for about a year, the property?
Yeah, well, no, honestly, it's a combination of, you know, I shared with you the broker's, you know, card that he's had, marketing it. You know, again, I've been showing as well. Honestly, hadn't really thought that this was necessary.
Right.
That, you know, that this is an available space within a manufacturing building, and as long as we're not trying to do something, you know, kind of crazy in there with it, you know, it was nothing more sort of impactful than food processing or ice cream, et cetera, that this was available as a use.
Right.
PDDs are, as I think all of us who are working on these are realizing that they're both, there's great things about them because of what they can provide, but on the other hand, they're also very specific documents that have, you know,
And
limitations.
we're written that way on purpose.
Deliberately, yeah,
Right. And remember,
So.
as you said, this PDD was written in the 70s,
correct.
which to me was like last week. I remember when we moved to Southbury, the manager of the Baskin Robbins lived across the street from us. And my kids thought they died and went to heaven because there was free ice cream. Every time you wanted it, you went and knocked down the door. So, you know, that was the original plan, and I think sometimes, as you say, we write things rather restrictive, but for purpose. And to change it is value, and I think that's something we certainly would like to do, but I think we need to
Right.
do it with thought. So that's why we're making you come back
So when is your next meeting?
March
next
9th.
month.
Yeah, it happens to be the same date, unusually.
But if you get everything in, and Ty, as she always does, shares it with us, we at least will come prepared
Okay.
to know what's going on, and if there's questions in between, that's the informal thing that we can go back to Ty about and say, please go call Attorney Green and, you know, ask him about this or that, so that when we come here, it becomes more of a formality of
Fair
what
enough.
needs to go through.
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you both, gentlemen.
Thank you
you.
very much.
Thanks. Thank you.
Is there any other new business to come before the commission? That's it. And according to our agenda, there is no old business this evening. So we move on to zoning enforcement officer's report.
So the four of you, I passed out regs to, at the beginning of the meeting. The Board of Selectmen approved Brian Miller as the consultant for the refresh. We're still in the process of getting his contract signed, but when you have the opportunity, if you want to go through your copy and make marks and write-ups, it's not to change anything, it's to make things clearer, to reference things properly. Maybe you've come across things, I've got lots of marks all over mine already, but we'll collect them maybe in about a month and try to get them back to Brian so that he can take everybody's thoughts and ideas and try to catch everything that he possibly can in this refresh.
So the one that you handed us, Ty, includes any changes or things that along the way we've done in the last few years, they've been put into this?
They should be.
As opposed to our old copy?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, it takes a while to get that new stuff in there, so, and I haven't been present for actually any new stuff that you've
Sure.
done yet, so I hope everything's there.
Okay.
I hope so, yeah. But
I
if
think
you
that's
notice
something Gary
anything
can help us
as
with,
well,
too.
then we can work on getting all of that in. There's lots of things
Okay.
to look at when we're doing that, but it'd be great if we, and I think maybe we'll mail it out to the other members who weren't able to be
Okay.
here tonight, so they can do it as well. Also, while we were on the topic of the PDDs, PDD 17, which is the like Heritage Village area, Gail was in here about that not long ago, has the seafood market, and then next door to it, the same owner purchased the Heritage Deli,
Mm-hmm.
and they've changed it to Hudson Bistro, I think they're calling
I think
it.
you're right.
When they came in October, they submitted their application as no change in use. It was gonna continue to be a deli, but just this past week, they came in for a liquor permit. So that made us question what was happening, and they rewrote their statement of use to reflect it more as a restaurant, which is a permitted use under PDD 17. So that's a non-issue, other than it just having to go back through building and fire marshal to make sure all that stuff is safe. The thing about the liquor permit is that on it, they have checked off entertainment. So they're looking for some kind of acoustical entertainment, and the PDD does not say one way or the other anything about entertainment. So I wanted to ask you guys, I've spoken with Keith Sorensen, who's the manager for PDD 17, the Heritage area, and he didn't have an issue with like an acoustical kind of light music, but the PDD didn't say it, so I wanted to see what, the people who wrote it, what your thoughts were on that. I maybe should mention, I don't think it's comparable at all, but the hotel that's very close by, when COVID happened and all the entertainment went outside for weddings, they had that big tent out
Yeah.
there, got a lot of complaints.
Yeah.
That became a big, but that's a huge undertaking, those are big events compared to somebody doing an acoustic guitar playing. So, I don't know, whatever your thoughts are, I can move forward, either asking them to do a text amendment to allow entertainment, or if you feel like that's something that was part of the restaurant expectation, then we can just move forward with approving it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Were the complaints from the residential
About the
condos?
hotel, yeah, never about, there hasn't been any entertainment in that little
The deli,
plaza area, in the deli,
Yeah, but I
yes,
mean-
which is now a restaurant.
But the complaints about the tent were from the people living in the area to
Yeah,
directly
yeah,
to the south.
exactly, like that built, that.
But you've got that big condo
That's-
complex,
Those were the people who were
right,
complaining
which is,
about that.
backs, or comes right up against that
Right.
hotel.
Right,
And of course, this deli is such a small place.
And it's
that,
right on the road.
Yeah, if they want entertainment and they're having outdoor dining, especially if there's more emphasis on outdoor dining. There's, sounds like we need to look, there might be a chance of somebody getting upset.
Do they even have a patio
Yeah.
added to that? They did have a patio on the side?
There's an outdoor patio, matter of fact, they've been burning, I don't know if they are now, but they've recently been burning the lights when they're not, the business isn't
Oh, really? I'll have to
functioning, but the patio lights, you know,
Go on.
kind of a pergola affair, have been lit.
Well, any thoughts
Maybe
on
they
this
can
one?
narrowly define entertainment. It's one of the things I wondered about. It's such a
That's very
broad
good
statement.
point. That's a very good point. What are they would need to be very specific, I would think, about what kind of entertainment and where.
And the use of amplifiers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is what they wrote with regard as it comes to, I mean, I don't,
Intermittent.
I think they meant entertainment. Will be-
Would I write this or?
As it comes to intermittent, will be only on the patio with some live music
So
for front.
it is planned for outside automatically?
And live music doesn't mean not amplified.
No. Not if you've ever had teenagers around, you know what that means. Well, are we being asked to
I'm,
decide
I'm
anything?
asking for guidance, so it sounds, I'm getting the sense that you don't feel like this was permitted automatically. So the options are, Mr. Sorensen can come in on behalf of PDD 17 with a text amendment to allow this, or you can, I guess that's what I can ask him to do, if that's what you want me to do. and
Which
then you
would
can make
lead
a decision.
ultimately to a public
It would,
hearing.
you'd be going through the same process as
Yeah.
PDD 1, you'd have to have a planning referral, and then you'd have to have a public hearing to permit that, if that's what you feel,
Give all the folks in the condos a chance to
an
voice their
opportunity to
complaints.
weigh in.
Yeah, your point is well made. If, since it would have to go to a public hearing, and we are sure that we've advertised enough and that Mr. Sorensen has gotten the word out, it's his responsibility for the neighborhood, as I think of it, that area, to speak out. If they have no problem, then I think, why would we have a problem? It really is their world. But I think public hearing would allow that to come out one way or the other.
Okay, so
When I think of where that place is, I can't imagine,
it's,
it's such an odd place, I would think, to want live music.
It's very small.
I know, it's really little. And that deli used to only be open, like through lunch, as I recall.
yeah.
It was
so-
more almost like a tea room type thing, you know what I mean?
Okay, so I
Yeah.
will let the owner know that a text amendment is in order for PDD 17 in order to move forward with
Is
their
everyone
entertainment.
comfortable with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, thank you for that guidance. Another thing I'm just kind of giving you a heads up on is that there is a proposal coming for charging stations, car charging stations for the Southbury Plaza. I think it's Stop and Shop, I'm not really clear on which, it hasn't come in yet, so we don't know which store has asked for it. Just kind of going by what you did when you put in the charging stations for the movie theater, you did it as a text amendment and a modification to the site plans. So I'm assuming that would be both in the text and the site plan, which is what I've conveyed to them. They did ask me about screen monitors, so it seems that the technology has evolved. Have you noticed on the gas stations now how they have those TV screens and all of that kind of stuff going on. So they did ask me what your thoughts were on that, and I just told them to propose what they wanted, and then you would give them your feedback. So when they come in with their proposal, I just said,
You're talking about touch screens for operating
no,
the
you know how there's
device.
like that whole, you can watch a whole television show. Have you gone to a gas station where, have you seen this?
I've seen them, yes.
Yes.
It's,
Have you seen it? Wow.
yes.
Yeah, so these seem like they have something similar. That's the way it's being described to me. I mean, I haven't seen it in person, but.
It's usually like a sort of a news clip
Yes.
and maybe an ad
You
or,
haven't seen this?
you
How
know.
big is the screen?
It's like
it's-
right on the pump.
Yeah,
Oh,
it,
okay.
yeah, like
Yeah.
maybe like to hear,
Okay.
yeah, like
So-
this, like a
So
small
it's
iPad.
it's noise and it's lights, so I don't know
But
what
it's in,
your,
it's in the middle of a PDD area,
yeah.
commercial with a lot of
Well, it's gonna be in the
traffic
parking
and
lot.
everything, so
Yeah.
it's not like it was put
Yeah,
on
I
the
mean-
side of Main Street South.
They're
And the
gonna-
typically, like, you know, while you pump, they
They're trying to
automatically
advertise.
operate. And then
Yeah.
once the pump is
Absolutely.
replaced,
That's
it
what
just
we're-
stops.
yeah.
So is it mainly advertising?
That's-
It does have some advertising, yes, yeah.
It also gives you weather, it's up to you.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Weather too.
Weather,
It's really
sports,
It's really interesting.
yeah.
So, I mean, that's what I'm understanding. Again, the application has not come in yet. They're just kind of feeling the waters of what so that's what I told them was just propose everything that they want, and then you'll talk, because all of this technology is so new and evolving that I'm sure you
Yeah.
haven't even had a chance to wrap your head around these things yet.
Do you remember when we had the meeting, with the folks that are going to help us do the plan of conservation and development? And they asked those of us in the audience, like, what kinds of stuff do you see coming up? And there was a lot of discussion about the
Charging
importance of these charging
Yeah.
stations and how they're gonna get paid for, not necessarily the installation, but the fees and so forth. So it's a very complex issue.
Yeah, and it's becoming a very,
Yeah,
yeah.
they don't wanna
prominent
do
one
this
now.
next week, right?
No, I mean, no, I don't think the urgency, not like what we've just experienced.
Yeah.
They're taking their time and they're developing a plan, and I'm just kind of trying to help them understand the process. So I just wanted to give you a heads up, as to what I've told them and what's
Yeah.
coming.
And I think it would be helpful if they were able to show us, like a demonstration video or something.
Yeah,
So we
yeah.
have, for those of us who
Okay.
have no clue, hello.
Right.
It might be useful
Alright,
to have a
I'll
better
convey
sense of
that
how it
to
works.
them
Yeah.
When they're ready to come in with their proposal, I'll try to convey that as
Okay.
best as I can. Another thing that Jessica just wanted me to make you aware of was that the property that's out by the airport has come up for sale. So you've heard that, so there's, different talking about the possibility of new businesses and opportunities in that area, so just making you aware, nothing has come in yet or anything, but, we have the, I guess the realtor kind of advertisement for it all. It's over the 3 towns
Yeah,
that
you've
are
got Middlebury
connected.
and Oxford
Yeah,
who own
yeah,
the bigger
I mean,
chunk
and I
of it.
can-
Ours is a little,
Southford Road, that area.
yeah, right down along, what is that, 180? No, what is it?
188.
That's 188, right? Yeah.
So there's 8 parcels in Southbury, I guess. They're all like different parcels, and
Mhm.
some are contiguous, and I think some are not. So it's just, the acreage in Southbury is 72.75 according to this. And then Oxford and Middlebury have more.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
much more. And the land, most of that land for all 3 towns has been fairly idle for a long, long time. The stuff that's there has been there for a long time, but there hasn't been a lot of add-ons. So
Right,
they're probably looking at the opportunity now to expand the,
right. And it
it's
sits,
almost like an industrial park, right?
well, for Southbury, it sits in an R60 zone as far as I understand it. So more than likely, it would be something like a PDD or PDU,
Mhm.
Again, nobody has specifically come in and asked for anything, just kind of Only other thing is, I think you asked about the liquor store at the last
Yes,
meeting.
I did.
So I did go in, she asked about the window coverage, it was a little excessive, and not a little, a lot excessive. So I
You mean
did,
because they're covered completely?
it's totally covered. And I did go in and talk to them, I don't know if you've ever been in that liquor store before, but their wine bottles are all actually on shelves in the windows, so the reason that, and it does seem like a justified reason, not that it's allowed, but the reason why they have that covering is to save the bottles from being
Light.
exposed to the sunlight. So I went in and I talked to them, and they, like, the front ones are like scenery, but on them have like wine bottles and Grey Goose advertised, and they're like, no, they're pretty scenery, you know, like I
Yeah.
don't think that their intent was, they're trying to protect their bottles, so I asked them
Really?
to get, well, yeah, all right, but I asked them to take a look at the different, like the shadings of the windows that maybe the Southbury Green uses, that tinted window stuff.
Yeah.
So they haven't done anything yet, I drive by all the time and keep my eye on it, and they have not, this was a couple weeks ago, I went in and talked to them. So I'll send them a notice of violation and move forward from there, but I just wanna let you know that I did follow up on that, and I'll try to work with them to
Yeah.
tone it down a little bit.
I don't know how much it weighed on the original rules, but I thought there was a utilitarian aspect also to not covering the windows, that police had to be able to
It was-
see
that
into
was
the
one of the
building
key things.
effectively.
Yeah, I think that was the biggest impetus. There was two. One was, if liquor stores, why not all stores? And then you began to see, Dunkin' Donuts, all their windows would get covered. So that's what that was all about. But the bigger concern came in from safety.
Okay.
The fact that the police would have no idea if there was something really bad going on in there.
So, I mean, like like it seems that Southbury Green has some tinted windows.
Yeah,
kind of-
that's,
So something like that would be acceptable, it's not advertising anything, and it might keep the sunlight out for them, but still you can see in and everybody's happy, so I'll try to.
Well, and if they're not
Understand in that
compliant, that opens the door to every other retailer in
I
town.
understand. Yep,
And that's
Yep,
part of
I
the problem.
well,
understand.
it's a commonly
Yes.
flaunted rule.
Yes.
yeah, signs, don't get me started.
And the sandwich boards.
It's a lot, yeah. So I think,
But thank you for looking into that.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it.
absolutely, I mean, actually, a lot of the complaints have quieted down. I don't know if it's winter, but I'm happy, and a lot of them have gotten resolved. I didn't get a chance to get my report out to you, but I can send that to you afterwards. But there hasn't been a ton of activity with regard to that, so that's a good thing.
Well, that's great. That's great. Anything else on
I
yours?
think I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Correspondence, that's my little file over here. There we go. This is to the zoning commission. It's from a Thomas Siwak, S-I-W-A-K.
That's a familiar name.
Does that, am I pronouncing it, do you think, correctly? I'm not sure. I believe that's the pronunciation. I've resided in Southbury for the last 8 years. My first encounters with our town were refreshing due to the new streetscape and the noticeable lack of neon signs. This suggested that our town cared about its appearance and made it more desirable compared to many surrounding sign-blighted towns, including the gross billboard displays. Since that time, we have now slowly progressed to turning our main, turning, and he typed this with a funny looking typewriter here, our main thoroughfares into commercial signage access for local businesses. I refer to the sandwich boards, that now, what he doesn't know is that the sandwich boards are a lot less than they used to be. I mean, we really have toned that down a little bit, but it's obviously bothering him. This visual pollution is out of control, and the signs are placed in town rights of way and have potential liability for pedestrians and traffic alike. Please consider a change of ordinance. that we will get the boards next to businesses, not our streets. Lastly, I want to acknowledge that Ms. Kearns, for her excellent job in removing plastic signs, and would encourage you to help her keep our town beautiful and joyful living. So, thanks very much to you. That was a nice compliment.
I believe that name is awfully familiar. I think he's come before us with complaints
Other
about
issues.
signs before.
I think he might be in the Heritage Village area, he lives up in that area.
Is there a return? I don't see, there was no return address on it.
Putting a sandwich board.
Next is from Dear Ms. Dwyer. In accordance with Section 8-7D of the Connecticut General Statutes, the Woodbury Zoning Commission hereby notifies the town of Southbury of the pendency of an application filed by O&G Industries, Inc. for renewal of earth materials permit for 2022-23. The property is located within 500 feet of the Southbury-Woodbury town boundary. More specifically, the property is located at 11 Stiles Road and Great Hollow Road. A public hearing has been scheduled for Tuesday, December 21 at 7 p.m. at the Senior Center, so that sort of like happened. The application, all the correspondence received to date available for review of Woodbury Land Office use that may submit written comments. This is a requirement that's when towns have anything that meet us. So I think it's really, there's just a notification that that took place.
Yeah. I think that one's similar.
This is exactly, yes. This is from attached proposal to the Middlebury, Connecticut zoning regulations, change for zoning map, public hearing scheduled in March coming up this year. And this is simply a notice of its being adjoining property. They're talking about down on Christian Road, which is over near, the elementary school that goes back as you head into Middlebury. And the property owner's New Haven Mortgage Company, LLC, and the town of Middlebury. So it's just to let us know that that hearing will be in March of this year. I think that's it. Anything else? Okay, so that's correspondence. The minutes were sent to us for January regular meeting minutes. I did not see any concerns, did any of,
I
but
didn't, they look good.
they look fine for me. Wendy, you got your copy?
I
of
did,
that? Came
thank
through?
you, that was fine.
David, you're good? Okay. So I need a motion to move and
we
accept.
accept the
Mr. Ashby moves, and I need a second,
Seconded.
and Wendy seconds. Thank you. Bills, we never have bills. Gary tells me never bills. Words are so cheap, I tell you. Any other business that may properly come before the commission? Ladies and gentlemen, anything else? If I can have a motion for adjournment.
So
So
moved.
moved. Wendy, David. See, amazing. Everybody was ready to second it.
Everybody wants to get out of here.